Memorial Day, let us pay our respects to all those who have worn our nation's uniform to defend our defend our freedom, while remembering also our soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guardmen still in harm's way, and particularly their families. In close, a quote from the late President Ronald Reagan's speech on Memorial Day 1982 at Arlington National Cemetery. Quote, as we honor their memories today, let us pledge that their lives, their sacrifices, their valor shall be justified and remembered for as long as God gives life to this nation. Unquote. At this time, I would like to recognize our distinguished guests. Distinguished guests, when you are introduced, would you and your spouse if present, please stand and be recognized. I would also like the audience to hold their applause until everyone has been introduced. For you first-timers to this ceremony, as a reminder, we have done this for 20 straight ceremonies, where we have done just that. He or she who breaks the record will receive a payment for the bill for payment of the water we used today. Richard Clayburgh III, civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. U.S. Congressman Will Hurd, 23rd District Congress, District, Texas. Major General Jimmy Keaton, Deputy Commanding General of Operations and Chief U.S. Army Nurse Corps, Army Medical Command. Major General Lorenz Patterson, Deputy Commanding General, Installation Management Command. Major General Dr. Bart Eidens, Commander, 59th Medical Wing, Wilfred Hall. Rear Admiral McCormick Boyle, Commander, Navy Medical Education and Training Command. Major General Retired James Cheatham. Brigadier General John Poppy, Deputy Chief of Staff, Public Health and Veterinary Corps Chief. Brigadier General Robert LaBruta, Commander, Joint Base San Antonio and 2nd Air Base Wing. Brigadier General Jeffrey Gaspard, Commanding General Mission and Installation Contracting Command. Colonel Matthew Eisler, Commander, 12th Training Wing, Randolph Air Force Base. Colonel Evan Rand, Commander, Brooke Army Medical Center. Colonel Keith Detweiler, Chief of Staff, Army North. Colonel Steve Sloss, Army Support and 502nd FSG Commander. Command Master Chief Axton, Navy Medical Education and Training Command. Chief Master Sergeant Troy Palmer, Command Chief, 12th Flying Training Wing, Randolph Air Force Base. Chief Command Sergeant Major Tavis Gavin, Brooke Army Medical Center. Kevin Wolf, Bear County Commissioner. Queta Marquez, Bear County Veteran Service Officer. Chief Master Sergeant Abel Rogers Sr., United States Air Force retired. Commander, Fort Sam Houston Memorial Services Detachment. Mr. Roberta Reed, Commander, Knights of Columbus. Judy Carlisle, Director of Reefs Across America. Lieutenant Colonel Chuck Rose, United States Army retired. President, Chapter 15, Alamo Chapter Green Beret Association, and Texas Interpreters Fellowship. Now we can applaud them all. With pleasure, I will introduce Mr. Aubrey Davis, Assistant Director, Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery, who will give the opening remarks. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Tom. Distinguished guests, members of veteran service organizations, fellow veterans, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you this morning. Thank you all for coming out, coming to these hallowed grounds. Today, I'd like to take the time to thank those that provide their continued support for this long-standing tradition of Memorial Day here at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Mr. Tom Ernest, retired United States Air Force. Tom continues to lend his support to veterans in the San Antonio area through many various organizations. But most importantly, as the president of the Greater Veterans of San Antonio area, Tom and his support committee continue to provide us this annual Memorial Day ceremony. I'd like to thank Abel, Commander, Memorial Service Detachment, and the Memorial Service Detachment who we have present here today for the funeral honors they provide to many veterans interred here in these hallowed grounds. To date, they have rendered honors for 30,587 veterans since 1991 and currently have 91 members. That's an outstanding achievement first and foremost, so thank you. Next, I'd like to thank the staff here at Fort St. Houston National Cemetery. They put in their hard work, dedication, sweat, and tears into providing dignified burials and keeping with the promise of maintaining this national cemetery as a national shrine for our nation's fallen heroes. I'd like to thank those in the audience for attending this ceremony and the community that visits our cemetery each and every day. Thank you for your support and patience as we go through rainfall that continues to soak our area. Your patience and understanding that the staff and I are doing our best to provide the marking of grave sites and perpetual care to the highest of standards. We thank you ultimately. Thank you. Lastly, I want to thank all the veterans. We owe a lasting tribute to these courageous men and women who stepped forward when their country called and made it possible for us to be here today, and to reflect with pride on America's past, present, and the promise of the future. With cherished memories, we will not forget them, and those whom we hold dear remain forever in our hearts. We consider our national cemeteries to be national shrines, not only because of their beauty, but also because they are focal points for remembering the brave men and women who put on the uniform and then willingly put themselves in harm's way. They expect nothing in return, except perhaps to be remembered, and that's why we're here today. Keeping their stories alive is a huge part of our sacred trust on Memorial Day and every day. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for welcoming our veterans and their guests to the ceremony for all that you and your staff do. And now, as an old man standing here, I must apologize, but I always save the best for last. This one very important person, Major General Trombitas, Deputy Commanding General of Operations, Army North, 5th Army. I apologize, sir, for the delay. At this time, let us observe the National Moment of Remembrance, which has been requested to be incorporated into all Memorial Day activities. In 2000, Congress established the National Moment of Remembrance, which asks Americans to pause at 3 o'clock p.m. each Memorial Day. This monument, or moment of remembrance and reverence, we dedicate to the memory of all service personnel who give their lives for their country and our rededication to the values of our country. Let's bow our heads in a moment of silence and prayer. Amen. Now a musical selection by the Alamo Metro Chorus of Sweet Anna Line.
Major General, he's one of the most important men in the About my house? No. Lieutenant colonels, colonels.
You know, and
But not at Major Colonel. That was not the buckles on a good stuff. No, she didn't. It was on another side.
Anybody for water?
No, I had something.
Okay. That's what I was assuming. I didn't know the guy's name, but I didn't see her stand up.
Right,
So I figured,
exactly. Thinking. Well, somebody messed up.
still a
I know. You put a lot of years in, you know what I mean?
So, 20 years ago,
That's what I said. He's got us in 17 years.
That's the time I retired. I've been telling you everything from just praying for me to get out. So you were praying for me to get out so you can come on. Get out, soldier.
Thank you, ladies. That was outstanding as usual.
Yeah.
It is with great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Queta Marquez. Ms. Marquez is a native of San Antonio. In December 1991, she enlisted in the Marine Corps. She graduated from the University of Maryland with a Bachelor of Arts in Government and Politics and was commissioned a second lieutenant on 2 June 2001. After 20 years in the Marine Corps, she decided to retire, and I had this, and of all days, 1 January 2012, New Year's Day. She was appointed to her current position as Bexar County Veteran Service Officer. You may read more about her and her accomplishments in your program. Ms. Marquez.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to everyone who is here today. Good morning to everyone. I cannot tell you how honored and humbled and grateful I am to be with you here today on this hallowed ground, on this very special occasion. Every year since 1868, we have set aside a day to remember and honor those who lost their lives in service to our country. I'm sorry, I'm really short. For some of us, this day is but one of many, because we cannot set aside the memory of a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a son, or a daughter, the remaining 364 days of the year. But it is a special day when our entire country can come together to honor our nation's fallen heroes. I recently mentioned to a friend that I was going to be speaking here this morning, and I mentioned the difficulty in trying to encompass the entire sense of gratitude, of loss, of mourning, of sadness, and also a desire to celebrate the lives of our fallen heroes, those who have sacrificed, those who have paid the ultimate price in service to our country. As someone who served in our nation's military for 20 years, this day is sacred. While I have not lost a biological family member, I, like my fellow brothers and sisters in arms, have lost fellow Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, and guardsmen. The pain of that loss can never be compared to the loss of a parent or a child. But it pains us nonetheless, and it touches us to our very core. For these brave men and women who we have lost to the tragedies of war became our family. These young men and women who, despite what was going on in our nation's history, within our country's boundaries at that time, fought for their buddies to the left and right of them. Countless men and women from all walks of life fought and died for the man or woman to the left or right of them, in front of them, or behind them. They came from different backgrounds, nationalities, socioeconomic status, religions, but they fought together with the goal of winning that battle and bringing their friends, their family on that battlefield home. During the last week, actually over the last couple of weeks, I'm sure many people who have served in the U.S. military or know members of the military or just are interested in military history. I've watched movies and I've read books on our country's history at time of war. In watching the movie American Sniper again, we learned about Chris Kyle, who did not die in battle, but who suffered the pain of the loss of his fellow service members. What he went through and what his family went through cannot be underestimated. In the book Flags of Our Fathers, we learn about Marines who fought on Iwo Jima, who were forever immortalized through a photograph, the raising of the flag on Mount Suribachi. We learn about the struggle that they went through in being called heroes, because in their minds, the heroes were those who never made it home. And we can understand that. We can understand that the sense of loss and the sense of grief. I'm also reminded of a young African American by the name of Henry Jackson, who served during World War I. He was the most famous member of the Harlem Hellfighters, an all-black National Guard unit that was among the first of American forces to arrive in Europe. He and his comrades spent their early days in the war performing unskilled manual labor before being sent to reinforce the ranks of the French army. On May 14, 1918, Johnson and another Hellfighter named Needham Roberts were on sentry duty in the Argonne Forest. Just after 2 a.m., they were attacked by a detachment of some 20 German troops. Both men had been wounded, Roberts so severely he couldn't stand or shoot. But Johnson held fast and fought back with hand grenades and his rifle. Despite being shot, he returned fire until his weapon jammed, and then used it as a club, fighting hand to hand until it broke. When he saw the Germans were trying to take Roberts prisoner, he drew his one remaining weapon left, a bolo knife, and he slashed and stabbed until the raiding party fell back. When the dust cleared, Johnson had inflicted at least a dozen casualties on the Germans and suffered 21 wounds from gunfire and bayonets himself. Both he and Roberts were given one of France's highest military honors, but went unrecognized in the U.S. until 1996, when he was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart. I am also reminded of a story of two Marines. And I tell this story that many of you may have already heard, and it came from a speech that Lieutenant General Kelly gave about two Marines in Iraq. Two Marines, Corporal Jonathan Gale and Lance Corporal Jonathan Jordan Harder, 22 and 20 years old respectively. One from each battalion were assuming to watch together at the entrance gate of an outpost that contained a makeshift barracks housing 50 Marines. These were two Marines from completely different battalions that were switching out and had never met before that day. The same broken ramshackle building was also home to 100 Iraqi police. It was, up until recently, the most dangerous city on earth and owned by Al-Qaeda. Yale was a dirt poor, mixed-race kid from Virginia with a wife and daughter, and a mother and sister who lived with him and he supported as well. He did this on a yearly salary of less than $23,000 a year. Harder, on the other hand, was a middle-class white kid from Long Island. They were from two completely different worlds. Had they not joined the Marines, they would have never met each other or understood the multiple Americas exist simultaneously, depending on one's race, education level, economic status, and where you might have been born. But they were Marines, and they were closer than if they had been born of the same woman. The mission orders they received from the sergeant squad leader, I am sure, went something like this. Okay, you two clowns, stand this post and let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. You clear? I'm also very sure Yale and Harder then rolled their eyes and said in unison something like, yes, Sergeant, with just enough attitude that made the point without saying the words, no kidding, sweetheart, we know what we're doing. They then relieved two other Marines on watch and took up their post on an entry control point of the Joint Security Station Nasser in the Sophia section of Ramadi, Al-Anbar, Iraq. A few minutes later, a large blue truck turned down the alleyway, perhaps 60 to 70 yards in length, and sped its way through the serpentine of concrete Jersey wall. The truck stopped just short of where the two men were posted and detonated, killing them both catastrophically. 24 brick masonry houses were damaged or destroyed. A mosque 100 yards away collapsed. The truck's entire engine came to rest 200 yards away, knocking most of the house down before it stopped. The explosive expert reckoned that the blast was made of 2,000 pounds of explosives. 2 died, and because of these two young infantrymen didn't have it in their DNA to run from danger, they saved 150 of their Iraqi and American soldiers in arms, brothers in arms. The regimental commander had just returned from the site and agreed that something was unusual. I traveled to Ramadi the next day and spoke individually to a half dozen Iraqi military police, all of whom told the same story. The blue truck turned down into the alley and immediately sped its way up as it made its way through the serpentine. They all said, we knew immediately what was going on as soon as the two Marines began firing. The Iraqi police then related that some of them also fired, and then to a man ran for safety just prior to the explosion. All survived. Many were injured, some seriously. One of the Iraqis elaborated, and with tears welling up in his eyes, said they'd run like any normal man would to save his life. What he didn't know until then, he said, and what he learned that very instant, was that Marines are not normal. Choking past the emotion, he said, sir, in the name of God, no sane man would have stood there and done what they did. No sane man. They saved us all. What we didn't know at the time and only learned a couple of days later was that both Yale and Harder, for posthumous Navy Crosses, who earned posthumous Navy Crosses, with one of the security cameras damaged initially in the blast, recorded some of the suicide attacks. It happened exactly as the Iraqis had described it. It took exactly 6 seconds from when the truck entered the alley until it detonated. You can watch the last 6 seconds of their young lives. Putting myself into their heads, I suppose it took about a second for the two Marines to separately come to the same conclusion about what was going on once the truck came into their view and at the far end of the alley. Exactly no time to talk it over or call the sergeant to ask what they should do. Only enough time to take half an instant and think about what the sergeant told them to do only a few minutes before. Let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. The two Marines had about 5 seconds to live. It took maybe another 2 seconds for them to present their arms take aim, and open up. By this time, the truck was halfway through the barriers and gaining speed the whole time. Here, the recording shows a number of Iraqi police, some of whom had fired their AKs, now scattering like the normal and rational men they were, some running right past the Marines. They had 3 seconds to live. For about 2 seconds more, the recording shows the Marines' weapons firing non-stop. The truck's windshield exploding into shards of glass, and their rounds take it apart and tore into the body of the man who was trying to get past them to kill their brothers, American and Iraqi, bedded down in the barracks, totally unaware of the fact that their lives at that moment depended entirely on 2 Marines, standing their ground. If they had been aware, they would have known that they were safe, because 2 Marines stood between them and a crazed suicide bomber. The recording shows the truck careening to a stop immediately in front of the 2 Marines. In all of the instantaneous violence, these 2 Marines never hesitated. By all reports and by the recording, they never stepped back. They never even started to step aside. They never even shifted their weight. With their feet spread shoulder-width apart, they leaned into the danger, firing as fast as they could, work their weapons. They had only 1 second left to live. The truck explodes. The camera goes blank. 2 young men go to their God. 6 seconds. Not enough time to think about their families, their country, their flag, or their lives, or their death. But more than enough time for 2 very brave young men to do their duty into eternity. That is the kind of people who were on watch all over the world tonight for you. Those are the kind of men and women that America has born. Those are the kind of men and women who have given their lives so that we may continue to live in freedom. From Gettysburg to the Argonne, from Belleau Wood, Guadalcanal, Normandy, Okinawa and Iwo Jima, Busan is the chosen reservoir, Quezon, Grenada, the desert is the Persian Gulf, Ramadi, Fallujah, Sangin and Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Our men and women have answered the nation's call. Our men and women have given their lives so that we may continue to enjoy holidays like today and others throughout the year. Over the weekend, I saw articles, social media posts, and interviews all about Memorial Day, and it became clear to me that as a nation, we must persuade our fellow countrymen to remember the real reason that we have Memorial Day. We must fight to preserve its meaning and not allow commercialization, confusion, lack of understanding to confound the fact that today is a day set aside to honor our fallen heroes. Those of you here clearly understand that, clearly know what it means. I am not sure that all of America does. But I do know that as a nation, we should come together each and every day, but especially on Memorial Day, to honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. To the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, we thank you, for we know that this sacrifice is one that can never, this is one debt that we can never repay. We thank you too for your service, and for all of those who made this possible, thank you for continuing to preserve this tradition.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marquez, for being here today and sharing those encouraging and appropriate words with us on this Memorial Day. Well, we're going to try something. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now honor our military services with presentation of their respective flags, accompanied by the playing of their songs by the 323rd Army Band, Fort Sam Zone. If you are a veteran or a family of a veteran, please stand and join in the singing of your service song. The words of each service song are in the program.
Plastic bag, can't go wrong.
While we're marching off, I'd like to recognize Mayor Ivy Taylor. All right, thank you, Mayor. We will now have the three volleys of Lucky Fire, Salmon of Town. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to cut this short so everybody's kind of here. Appreciate it. Have a safe trip home. And God bless you. God bless the military. And God bless the United States of America.
Yeah.